All right, all right. Drop a comment. Let me know you are here. 11 a.m. on the dot. Excited for today's session because it's all about sales. And one of my favorite quotes, sales cures all. I actually did a podcast yesterday with a gentleman by the name of Alex Schlinsky, who's well known in the agency space, but he's also a sales coach. So had a great conversation yesterday about the biggest mistakes that salespeople make, his thoughts on whether you should be using scripts, what the best sales teams do. So again, this is very, very top of mind, and really excited to share the Enrollment Accelerator Blueprint that you guys can take and implement right into your facility. So again, if you're watching live, I see there's a few of you on, please say hello, drop a comment below so I know that you are here. My mission today is to help you develop a sales system to consistently close 80% of all appointments that come in. If I had $1 for every time I've heard a school owner say, Chris, if you can get them in my door, I will close them. A lot of school owners, say that. And if they are tracking their stats properly, more than likely they do not have 100% close rate, but we should absolutely be aiming for an 80% close rate. Good morning, Miss Vihill. Nice to see you on here, ma'am. We got to get a pickleball game in. I love seeing all of your story updates on Instagram. The kind of agenda is we're going to touch on some of the conversion metrics that you should be aiming for, the difference between having an actual process versus having a personality that can sell in your school, the importance of the very first touch point, because the sale starts before they even walk into your academy. How we can add some personalization to the process, and then the 4-step enrollment process. Hello, Miss Efferson. Nice to see you. Hello, Miss Jilly. Thank you for being on today. So Mark Cuban has a famous quote that says, sales cures all. And while it's not the only thing we should be focusing on in our business, because retention is such an important aspect of growing and scaling, I know from personal experience when sales are rolling in, I'm maybe in a slightly little better mood. I'm curious to know if you guys are the same. Grant Cardone, who's also known as a very popular sales coach, he's written a bunch of books, but he says, if you don't sell, you're not in business. Sales are the lifeblood of your company. And these things are just absolutely true, but we have to have a process. Good morning, Miss Smith. Good morning, Miss Ross. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So I always say math is the path. You and your team should have a scorecard. I'm reading a really great book right now. It's called The 4 Ds of Execution. And it talks about the importance of team members understanding the score. It's like if you were to go to a football game, how involved with watching the game would you be if nobody was keeping score, right? I remember as kids, we're playing at the park, and then somebody says, let's start keeping score. Well, everybody gets a lot more interested in playing that game. And your team and your business should have a scorecard, and there should be specific metrics that your team should be aiming to hit. And we really look at this in a couple of different areas. Your lead to appointment ratio. So how many of the leads are we actually converting to appointments? And we want to aim for about 50%. And, I know that this can be kind of like frustrating if you get, 50 leads, but only book 25 appointments. And what we just have to understand is that there's a buying cycle. Where those leads come from plays a role into that. So we want to be aiming for 50%. And then out of the appointments that we book, we want to be aiming for at least 70% of them to show. If you have a free offer where they're not required to pay prior to coming in, then you'll probably be at around that 70% or want to aim for that. If you have a paid trial offer, that number will be much higher. And then out of all the appointments that actually show, we want to aim for 80% of them to close. So if you had 10 appointments walk in, we want to convert 8 of these. And you need to be tracking these. You should be looking at these numbers at a minimum on a weekly basis with your team. We like using Mondays as our meeting day where we are tracking these percentages, because if one percentage is off, that's going to let us know where there is a hole in the bucket. Okay, so you've got to be tracking it. Your team needs a scorecard, and that's how one of the ways you can hold them accountable to hitting these numbers. Now, I remember when my wife and I really started systemizing Gracie Pack, and at the time, she was handling all of the enrollment processes, and she is a natural sales woman. And some people have that natural ability, others don't. And oftentimes the school owner themselves will usually have a very high closing rate. But if there's ever a time where you don't want to be involved in that process and you want to delegate it to somebody else, well, we can't just rely on their personality. So when we're creating a process, there's a few things that we need to look at. The first one is we've got to map that journey. Like, what does it look like from the very first second that we get the lead, right? What does the follow-up process look like? What does the confirmation process look like? What does it look like when they are first entering your school? What does if you offer an introductory class or a 2-week trial or a 4-week trial, what does that journey look like? And you really need to map it, and you need to consider what you want your customers to experience throughout that journey. And when you can put that down on paper and then share that with your team, you're now starting to create a process. Now, once you've mapped out that journey from that first touch point to when they actually enroll in your school, then what we're going to want to do is create some playbooks. And playbooks is just another way to say SOP. And I just prefer playbooks because I think it sounds cooler. But you need to create some systems and processes, put down on paper on what that journey should ideally look like. The next part of this would be building out, and I'm going to put scripts, and I'm going to put it in air quotes here, because what we don't want is our team to sound scripted, but we do want them to have a framework, a guide to help them through the conversation. And oftentimes, one of the biggest mistakes that salespeople make is they're so focused on awareness of all of the things that we have to offer, as opposed to guidance based off of the individual challenges and benefits that the person is seeking. And that's why role playing is just such a huge important aspect of this. And I highly recommend at least once a week. It doesn't need to be for a full hour. 20 to 30 minutes, is enough for them to start getting those reps in. Professionals practice more than they play. Amateurs play more than they practice. So we have to have that role-playing training time in. And then we want to set clear goals. What is the actual enrollment number every month that we are aiming for? And we're going to track that data looking at the percentages that we talked about. We also want to consider automating some of the more repetitive tasks. So automations are absolutely great for this, but we have to remember we don't want to automate the entire process. There needs to be that human-to-human connection as well. And then finally, watching game tapes. So actually recording your role-playing sessions. If you have a camera in your office, you can watch that footage and then providing feedback on the game tape. So this is an actual sales process versus just relying on somebody that has a great sales personality. Okay, so as I walked through that, I'd love for you to kind of just marinate on what is the area of improvement that you can focus on. Like, have you mapped the journey? Do you have the playbooks? Are you doing role playing and training? Have you set clear goals with your team? Are you guys tracking this and speaking about it in your weekly meetings? Have you automated some of the repetitive tasks? Like, do we have automations that automatically reach out to the prospect for confirmation bookings? And are you watching game tape? More than likely, there's one or two in here that could use some improvement. The other thing we have to consider is that the sale begins before the prospect even steps foot into your facility, which is why we want to map that journey out and really consider what the online customer experience should feel like from their perspective. And oftentimes that first touch point, if they're opting into a website, is an automated text message or an automated email. And then hopefully within 5 minutes, you and your team are following up. On day 2 of the 12 Days of Christmas, we did the lead response mastery training, and we actually went through the recommended phone script to use and all of the major touch points and the objections. And that should also be a part of your weekly role playing and training. And then not just the initial appointment booking call, but also what does the confirmation sound like? We want to make sure that during this journey that our prospects are going through, that they know us, they like us, and they trust us. And the trust is such an important aspect, because the more trust that we can build in before they even step foot into your facility, then there's a higher likelihood of the close occurring. So we want to consider that customer experience from the very first time they've reached out. And I mean, even your website, right? If you don't have a mobile optimized website, if you don't have a website where it's easy to navigate and find the things that people are looking for, that's a negative online customer experience that they're having before they even step foot into your facility. More than likely, they're also looking at your Google business profile, and they're looking at your Google reviews, right? All of this plays a role into that first touch point. And we want to make sure that when they step foot into our facility, all of the promises we made prior to them coming in, we are going to fulfill on, okay? The other thing I want you to consider is, how can you personalize this experience? How can you really wow them? One thing that is just super simple is greeting people at the door. My son Cruz trains at Coco Banny's Family Martial Arts. It's a Taekwondo school. And every single time at the end of class, Chief Master Coco Banny actually walks to the door and opens the door for everybody and says goodbye, high five, fist bump to the parents, to the kids. And I'll never forget, when I first went in to get information for Cruz's training, I went in by myself. And, I sat down, we looked at the schedule, we talked about the pricing options, and then we booked a free class for him. And one of the questions he asked is, is your partner going to be coming as well? And I said, yes, her name is Stephanie. And the day that we came in, we walked in, and there they were right at the door greeting us. And not only did he, call me by name, but he also called my wife Stephanie by name. And I just thought that it's such a great small example of personalizing this experience. Some other things that you could do is, if you have like a whiteboard or a chalkboard or a news board, having their name on it as they come in. One of the things that we've done at Gracie Pack is we have the trial kit on the front desk. So we have their name on a small little chalkboard. So we write their name on that chalkboard that sits on a tray. And then on the tray, we have the uniform, we have the schedule, all of the items that we've prepared before they even come in. And it's just a really nice wow experience. So I want you to think about, how can you wow them and personalize it? Because what we have to remember is everybody is tuned in to WIIFM. What's in it for me? So think about, it can sometimes be hard because we have the curse of knowledge, right? This is the industry that many of us grew up in. We're so used to doing this that we often don't look at it through the eyes of the prospect. So how can you really wow them? Okay. So I want to go through the 4-step enrollment process. This is a process that MAIA, the Martial Arts Industry Association, teaches. And it's just a great framework. And whether you use this or you use another framework, I just want to make sure that you have a framework in place that not only you can go through, but you can delegate to other team members to go through. So step number 1 is just talking about the student, asking them, tell me a little bit about your child. And really what we're trying to figure out is just what problem are they trying to solve? And if you don't do this, what will often happen is that big mistake that we talked about in the beginning, where the salesperson is just so focused on awareness, wanting to make the prospect aware of everything that you do and how great you are, and you're not tailoring the conversation to what that specific person's needs are. So we really have to figure out what problem are they trying to solve and what do they ultimately want to accomplish. And oftentimes you have to go fishing, you have to peel back that onion layer, because when you ask them this question, you might get like a superficial initial answer. And we just need to dig in a little bit deeper and ask them, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because we want this conversation to be personalized to their needs and not just making them aware about our program. The second step is how your school will help them solve this. And I want you to have a mindset shift. It's not about how martial arts will help them solve it, because if martial arts helps them solve it, then they can go to your competitor down the road. It's how your school will help them solve this. And you need to be very specific, right? When I ask martial arts schools, like, what makes them unique? Oftentimes a school will say, oh, well, we help children build confidence and discipline and respect. And it's like, well, every martial arts school says that, right? So how do you do it specifically? We got to get very specific. So let's say the pain point for this particular parent is the child is really shy. They have trouble making eye contact. They don't speak up when they introduce themselves. We've all seen those kids that hide behind their parents' legs, right? Literally, probably within 30 seconds of a family coming in, you're going to know, are they there for confidence or are they there for discipline? If they're there for confidence, it's because the kid's usually hiding behind the leg. If they are there for discipline, that kid is usually bouncing around everything, running up and down the bleachers, touching everything. So we want to make sure that we are specific to how our school will help them solve this. So in the case of building confidence, you can dive into that. Every class they're going to be asked to try something new. Our instructors will praise their efforts. We use spotlighting and highlighting. They have the opportunity to earn stripes and earn ranks. And ultimately, every time they come in and they're going to be asked to try something new, they're going to get that repetition in, and that competence will ultimately lead to confidence. So the step 1 and step 2 is so important, that we're not just making them aware and that we are guiding the conversation to help them solve the specific need that they have, and highlighting how our school, not just martial arts, but our school will help them solve that. The third step is all about future pacing and pre-framing upgrade programs. If you don't have upgrade programs, then you could use rank as the example. But what we're trying to do here is paint the picture of what the future looks like. And we're going to use social proof of the other students that are in the facility. So one of the things that we always did at my academy is we had different colored uniforms based off of the programs that they were on. So we had a white uniform, a blue uniform, and a black uniform. And as we go into step number 3 and we are future pacing and pre-framing the upgrade, we're going to let that family know that all of the students over there that are wearing the blue uniforms and the black uniforms, they're actually on 3-year programs. And over 80% of our student body are on those programs. And we have a nomination process that is involved. We will reach out if we believe your child is ready for that. But however, you're not going to start on that program. All of our students start on our 12-month basic trial program. And not only are we future pacing and pre-framing the upgrades, but we're also using a concept in psychology called anchoring. You know, if you go to, I'm sure everybody's doing a lot of like Christmas shopping right now. And let's say you go to a shoe store and you see some shoes that are up on the wall and it says they're, $175. And you look at the shoes. I don't know about you. I don't think I've ever spent $175 on a pair of shoes, but I'd be like, man, that's really expensive. But then the sales associate comes up to you and they say, that's actually on sale. It's only $100. Well, psychologically, I'm thinking that the value and the worth is $175. So I'm anchored into that price. And then when I hear that it's $100, I feel like there's a big savings. We're doing something similar here by saying all of these other students are on these 3-year programs. However, all of our students start in our 12-month basic trial program, and it makes the 12 months not seem as long because the other students are on 3-year programs, okay? And again, if you don't have an upgrade program, then you can utilize rank as the example. And then the final step is we are going to present the program and pricing options. One of my favorite quotes, life is better with options. And you really need to have a visual component with this. And we recommend using a flip book. If you want to, digitize it, you could also, make it like an online PDF. But you want to review all of the benefits that they are going to receive and highlight the benefits that help the specific pain point that they are looking to solve. You want to be upfront and explain things like family plans and what you do if freeze requests come in. And then you're going to go through the payment options. We always start with the largest payment option. So in our case, that would be a paid in full, but we really want to focus on the savings. Also, if you have new student packages that are required to be purchased when they come on board, we want to be upfront with that. We don't want any buyer's remorse. Cruz does soccer. And when we signed them up for soccer, there was, a soccer, we had to buy, the shorts, we had to buy the shirt. It's an expectation that parents have when they are enrolling their children in extracurricular activities. And I feel like for a lot of schools, this is a huge profit center that they aren't leveraging, and you should be tying in your packages into your programs. So you want to go over that. And then we're just going to ask which option works best for you. Now, oftentimes when I have, trained my team members and watched them do it, they do this more as a presentation versus a conversation. And it should be a conversation, a personalized conversation, reviewing the specific benefits that will help them. So that is the 4-step enrollment process. And I said this earlier, professionals spend more time practicing than they do playing, and amateurs spend more time playing than they do practicing. And if this is something that maybe you as the owner are currently doing and you want to start feeling confident in having somebody else doing it, you have to build this into your weekly trainings. You should record them. You should review them because role play and game tape are such an important part. I always love looking outside of our industry and looking at other industries. And in the sales specific industry, when you look at companies that have huge sales forces, the amount of resources that they put into training, oftentimes it's multiple times a week that they're doing role-playing sessions, that they're doing gameplay, game tape sessions. And while, we don't have huge sales forces in our martial arts school, you will eventually have somebody that is going to handle this for you, and you need to provide them with the resources and the training to really get great at this so that you don't feel like you have to be the one to do the sale. So I want you to consider, are you doing role playing consistently, right? Sometimes I think schools, they'll do it for a week here and maybe next month they'll do it again, but it really should be done consistently, okay? So your action step is to write your sales playbook, right? Whether that's mapping out the journey, whether that's honing in on one specific aspect of that journey. I'd love for you to get a playbook on paper that has to do with the sales process. You can use the AI wizardry training that we did on day 1 to expedite this. So I shared how you can use ChatGPT to really pump out playbooks very, very quickly. And as a giveaway, something that Maya offers is a free academy audit. So if you feel like you're kind of struggling with some of these operational systems inside of your school, you can get on a free call with Ernie Polesko. In order to set that up, I've got his email address here. You can reach out and get a free academy audit. This is a great time to get this in as we're going into the new year, and just really figure out where we have some room for growth. And I appreciate everybody hopping on today, and I hope everybody makes it a great day. We'll see you tomorrow, 11 a.m. sharp. All right, guys, bye-bye.